But I
It's
mean, I
all the
think
same.
there is that sense of guilt and shame, this is latent in, in certainly in white people culture, that you want to say, well, that's not the experience that, that we feel that is happening, right? Because you don't want to admit it,
And
basically, I
that's where
think,
the yoga comes in, right? We
yeah,
got to be able to sit with our feelings of guilt and shame.
yeah,
And, maybe at that moment we can't have the conversation, but it's like, I really want to sit down and talk to you about this, but at this moment I'm not resourced to have this conversation. Is there another time that we can sit down for coffee and chat? 'Cause I really appreciate you coming to me, and I feel honored, and I really want to learn and grow and hear your voice. And then maybe sit with the shame and all the feelings that are coming up and figure out some way to work through them, so that you can be an open vessel, open to learning when you do have that conversation with
mm,
whoever was vulnerable enough to bring it up to you. Or even if they weren't vulnerable enough, if you're listening to like this or
yeah,
reading books,
yeah.
being able to sit with your shame for a minute, stop reading, stop listening, sit with it, work with it, and then come back forward. A good book, and I know you've mentioned this, is Respa Manikin's book, My Grandmother's Hands, because he
Yeah,
has all those
he's
activities and stuff
fantastic.
that you can
Yeah,
do,
yeah,
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 to
yeah.
work for stuff.
I think everyone needs to be informed about it because, yeah, as I say, it's like, is it a silly kind of comparison? Is like before you stop eating meat, for example, like you never really realize, like, you know, it's like you never really have a look around. It's like the same thing with this list. Before you start actually kind of reading the stuff, you never really realize what's there because it's all covered over, right? You know,
Mhm.
and then you
It's
start reading this
scary.
stuff, and you're just like,
Yeah.
wow, like that book for me. I mean, it was opened my eyes incredibly. So, I mean, so what are the feeling? What I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what does it feel like, or to be silenced? How did you feel like you were silenced, and how did you move on from that?
Basically, it feels like something is eating away at your soul, that your light is being eaten away. And when it was happening, trauma makes us see the world through like through a
Yeah,
very distorted lens. And honestly, it wasn't until it was like I woke up one day and I'm like, I'm not who I want to be. This is not my life. It's like, I don't know. It's like an awakening happened. And I looked around and I'm like, what am I doing? This is not me. This is never what I've wanted. This is not taking me anywhere. And then doing the work to figure out, where did this start? Where did I
mm,
start losing my light? Where did I start losing myself? Where did I start going off of this path, off the path that I wanted to be on? And really being honest with myself. And there's a certain amount, a degree of shame and disappointment that, I had to sit with when I realized how much of myself I had given away. And basically, yeah, when you're being silenced, you feel like you're not important, you feel empty, you feel invalidated. Um, and then you start to believe what other people are saying about you. You start to internalize it, take it on, and then that eats at you even more. And it is a long process to start to unpack all that and to uncover it. And I'm still unpacking,
right.
all the feelings that I've had about myself due to listening to other people's ideas of who I should be and what I should be doing.
Mm, mm, mm.
Mhm.
How can we practically, in this short little chat we're having, give people or teachers ideas of how to make safer, more inclusive spaces? I mean, also, I mean, I'd like you to talk about ableism in yoga, which I think is definitely the ableism is a phrase that I've only, I heard from you first, right? I heard it a little bit now, but I mean, you talk a lot about it, and that's another classic case of so many people feeling excluded from yoga practice, right? And it's still out there with the cues that people are giving. And I use this language as well, like if you can't do this, like this is a modification of this posture, right? And it's only recently that you kind of realize, being an able white person, Jesus, there's so much that I'm learning now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I do a lot of workshops, and some of them are online, some of them are in person where I talk about belonging, accessibility. I think they even have access to one that you did, that they can, a recording that they can still purchase. But I do them all the time,
Yeah,
honestly.
it's a
Like if
fantastic,
you
yeah,
follow
fantastic
me,
workshops. Follow her and
Shayna
come to the workshop. Yeah, I was
Shayna
great.
Small
Yeah.
Official. I'm always talking about, oh, that's on Instagram. If you follow me, I'm always doing some type of workshop. And if it's in person and you can't get there this time, just hang tight and know that in a few months, I'm going to do some other workshop that's going to talk about accessibility, that's going to talk about how to help people feel like they belong, because it's a process. It's not, I think people give up because they don't want to do the work. Like, we understand what it is to do work on a mat, but doing this type of work, we don't want to do. We want it to happen overnight because it's super uncomfortable and it just doesn't work that way. So there's a lot to unpack. So the workshops help me to unpack everything. And then you'll leave with things that you can start to do and start to apply.
Mm,
But it's not going to happen overnight. It's not like I'm going to start doing these things and my yoga studio population is going to change overnight. It does not work that way, and nor is
mm.
that trauma informed. Changing people's experiences and
Yeah,
changing your business overnight
yeah,
is traumatic for the people who
yeah,
are
yeah,
actually coming
yeah,
to your classes. So it really is something that we have to dedicate ourselves to. It can't be overnight. Like things like anti-racism, helping people to feel like they belong, accessibility, all of this stuff is a lifetime of work. It's not overnight at all.
yeah.
It's slow work too.
But also the thing is, it's proactive work because those people are not going to come up to you and go, "Hey, what this class didn't feel inclusive for me," or I felt unacceptable, unacceptable here, right? I mean, you have to go to understanding what a person's experience
Mhm.
might be. I mean, you talked very well recently about uh, person-centered yoga, right? Like if you
Yeah.
start from that basis that a person-centered yoga is for the individual, you kind of that's a good kind of rule of thumb, isn't it? You can't kind of go wrong from that idea, right?
It is, but the reality is most yoga studios don't teach
Yeah,
um, person-centered yoga. They teach according to a brand, that this is their brand and these are the things that make up their brand. And so you have to see these branded items in every single class. That's
yeah,
how they teach. So if someone comes to class and your brand is not for them,
yeah,
then you basically like teach whatever and you just kind of lose that person, or that person is forced to change to fit into your brand, but you don't really see them. And it's a different way of teaching. And when I first started teaching yoga, I'm not teaching yoga, practicing yoga, honestly, 20 something years ago, that is how teachers taught. Really, it was like you didn't know what you were going to get in a class. I mean, you knew the feeling of it, like if you're going into a flow class, it was going to flow, but you didn't know it might be slower that day, it might be
yeah,
faster,
yeah.
there might be more arm balances, there might be more basics. There was times I showed up and the teacher would be like, "We're just going to do a wall class today," and we would all move up against the wall. Like you those types of things you didn't know because it was according to who showed up that day and what was needed in that moment. So the class could be completely different. And that is how people taught. And even with Ashtanga, with Mysore style, you're teaching according to the person who showed up that day. You're going to take that sequence. And if there's something going on with their shoulder, you're going to adjust something. If, they're really tired, you're going to adjust something. If their life, there's a lot going on and they can't handle a very
You
long
should. I mean, it
practice,
doesn't
you're
always
going
bear
to,
out in that way, we have to say, right? But that's how, Mysore
yeah,
was taught originally, right? Like we had that
yeah.
conversation before that it was, it certainly was meant that way originally, but, I mean, it's also become a kind of brand, and you do the sequence in the right way and you get the points, you get, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get the accreditation, the points, whatever that looks like, right? But so you think
Mm-hmm.
that it's become, I mean, gradually yoga's become increasingly kind of corporatized, right? I mean, it's
That's it.
part,
Commercialized,
yeah,
capitalized, colonized,
yeah,
all of those
yeah,
things. And we
yeah, yeah,
we
yeah.
have to like slowly start to tick it back. And it's going to take time. Like I said, you can't. And I understand yoga studio owners are like, well, this is what brings the bodies into the room. I get that. But that's why it has to be a slow process. It's not like, well, this is just what it is. That's what I hear, honestly, from my yoga studio owner friends. It
Right.
is what it is. They're not interested. It is what it is. It's like, okay, so you're part of the problem, is what you're saying.